House will be in order. Proceedings will resume on questions previously postponed. Votes will be taken in the following order: passage of H.R. 875 and passage of H.R. 275. The first electronic vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, the remaining electronic votes will be conducted as a 5-minute vote. Pursuant to Clause 8, Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on the passage of H.R. 875, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 19, H.R. 875, a bill to amend the Immigration and Nationality Act to provide that aliens who have been convicted of or who have committed an offense for driving while intoxicated or impaired are inadmissible and deportable.
The question is on the passage of the bill. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 245, the nays are 160.
Ms. Sewell. Votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 246, the nays are 160. The bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote and passage of H.R. 275, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar number 130, H.R. 275, a bill to require the Secretary of Homeland Security to publish on a monthly basis the number of special interest aliens encountered attempting to unlawfully enter the United States and for other purposes.
The question is on passage of the bill. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
vote, the yeas are two.
Oh, I was trying to do other things. Ms. Kamick. Votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 231, the nays are 182. The bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Georgia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the clerk be directed to make the change in the engrossment of H.R. 275 that I placed at the desk. And, Mr. Speaker, I hereby remove my name as co-sponsor of H.R. 1329.
We'll suspend. The clerk will report the change.
Modification to H.R. 275 offered by Ms. Green of Georgia in Section 2C2 of the bill, strike, quote, 4872D2, end quote, and insert, quote, 4872F2, end quote.
Is there any objection? Without objection, so that ordered.
Do it one more time. Okay.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Georgia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I hereby remove my name as co-sponsor of H.R. 1329.
The request is granted. For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on House Administration be discharged from further consideration of H-Con Res 39 and ask for its immediate consideration in the House.
The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Concurrent Resolution 39, concurrent resolution authorizing the use of Emancipation Hall in the Capitol Visitor Center for a ceremony to present the Congressional Gold Medals awarded under the Harlem Hellfighters Congressional Gold Medal Act.
Is there objection to the consideration of the resolution? Without objection, the resolution is agreed to and the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House out of order for 1 minute.
Without objection, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker, it is with a heavy heart that I rise, together with my colleagues from the New York delegation, to honor the memory of former Congresswoman Carolyn McCarthy from New York's 4th Congressional District. She was a trailblazer in Congress and a visionary leader who turned an unimaginable tragedy into a lifelong mission to protect others. Carolyn was a tireless advocate for the South Shore of Nassau County on Long Island and a fearless champion in the fight against gun violence. After the heartbreaking loss of her husband and the injuring of her son in a horrific shooting, Carolyn could have retreated into grief, but instead she chose action. She ran for Congress as a mother, a nurse, and a voice for families devastated by the senseless scourge of gun violence. Her courage helped shape the national conversation and inspired a generation of advocates whose work is saving lives in communities across our country every day. She also advocated for America's children as a member of the Education and Workforce Committee, working to fund school lunch programs. She was also key in drafting the watershed No Child Left Behind Act in 2001, which aimed to make our schools more accessible for students with disabilities. My family, all of us on Long Island, the New York delegation, and New York State, and our nation mourn her passing. We are praying for her loved ones and for all the lives who were touched by her decades of service. Mr. Speaker, I ask all of my colleagues to join us now in a moment of silence in the memory of Honorable Carolyn McCarthy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
I'm going to let it clear out a little bit. Those in conversation, please leave the chamber so we can start with our 1-minute speeches. The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Wyoming seek recognition? Recognized. The gentlewoman will suspend. The House will be in order.
I rise today to recognize a remarkable Wyoming institution, the Bill Cody Ranch, as it celebrates its centennial. For 100 years, the Bill Cody Ranch has welcomed guests from across the country, giving them a taste of the American West. As a flag bearer of Wyoming's Dude Ranch community, the Bill Cody Ranch is truly a remarkable testament to the enduring cowboy spirit that we hold near and dear to our hearts in Wyoming. The Bill Cody Ranch continues as a living legacy of stewardship, hospitality, and dedication to our way of life. Please join me in congratulating the ranch and the many families who have called it home on reaching this marvelous milestone. Your commitment to preserving Wyoming's heritage is something that we are all proud of. Thank you and congratulations once again on this historic milestone.
What purpose does the gentlewoman from the Virgin Islands seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman from the Virgin Islands is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have repeatedly told people when asked about the rationale for actions of this administration to follow the money. Yesterday in the House Budget Committee, we heard alarming testimony from expert witness Robert Gordon. He reminded of those motives in the Republicans' reconciliation bill when he explained the lucrative opportunities for powerful private contractors to profit off of the red tape in the bill created in Medicaid. Republicans' beautiful bill for billionaires requires increased work check-ins for people to retain that Medicaid. For employment data, states are likely to use the work number from Equifax, which costs over $20 per person per search. Under the bill, more than 18 million people would have to be checked every month. That equates to $360 million per month, and that is $4.32 billion per year, or roughly $43 billion over the bill's 10-year budget. Going to the vendors who make money, who are going to be processing this, follow the money.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I wish to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to honor Sue Mitra, a remarkable high school student from Brevard County who has shown incredible commitment to service in our community. While attending West Shore Junior and Senior High School, she became youth ambassador for the Children's Home Society of Florida. She volunteered with groups like Who We Play For and HOSA, Future Healthcare Professionals. Through a web-based campaign, Mitra raised over $20,000 to enhance STEM education activities at Endeavor Elementary School and even served as their senior high class president. For her efforts, she earned the National Peter R. Burse Silent Servant Scholarship Award. Mr. Speaker, I am proud to recognize Ms. Mitra for her leadership and her service to community, and with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The vibrant African American community in the Bronx and Westchester County have had a tireless advocate on their side for decades, the NAACP, fighting for reform and social progress, the rights of residents who want a fair shot in life, and a better today and tomorrow for their children. We're all familiar with the effective advocacy of the NAACP, including the lifetime achievement of Dr. Hazel Dukes, who recently passed away, but there are local heroes, too, who do exceptional work in our hometown neighborhoods. Let me recognize some of these key branch leaders. In Co-op City, Leslie Peterson and Brenda Brown. In New Rochelle, Aisha Cook and Jarrika Lee. In Yonkers, Keisha Skipper and Karen Edmondson. Williamsbridge, Laura Rodan and Shirley Fearon. Mount Vernon, Kathy Brewington and A.J. Woodson. White Plains, Greenberg, Janice Griffiths. Portchester Rye, James Henderson III. And other leaders such as Minister Mark McLean, Reverend Frank Coleman, and the Reverend Margaret Fountain Coleman. Their hard work and principled advocacy for equal rights, economic justice, education warrants recognition on the floor of the House of Representatives. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize Madison Wasmer. Madison is a junior at Jackson High School and has recently earned the Eagle Scout Award, becoming the first female in Jackson County to earn this distinction. To achieve this, Madison obtained 21 merit badges, showcasing fundamental skills she learned as a scout and commitment to her community. Madison is a true leader who has served on her school's student council, engaged in local cleanup initiatives, and assisted special needs students. A member of Troop 7056, Madison embodied the spirit of the Scouts, which is to make ethical and moral choices that contribute to the well-being of society, ultimately fostering civic engagement and love of community. Madison, Southern Ohio is proud of your accomplishments and happy to call you one of our own. I look forward to seeing how you continue to create positive change in Ohio's 2nd Congressional District. I would also like to recognize Madison's grandmother and Scoutmaster Ryan Pelliter for their role in this process. Without them, this achievement would not have been possible. Congratulations, Madison. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina seek recognition?
I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today with grave concerns about Donald Trump's proposal to eliminate FEMA. In September 2024, Western North Carolina was ravaged by Hurricane Helene, the most devastating storm in our state's history. We lost over 100 lives, and countless communities were changed forever. In the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Helene, FEMA provided indispensable support to save lives, clear debris, and house families who lost everything. As hurricane season begins, it is a disgrace that Donald Trump and his administration are proposing the elimination of FEMA. This scheme is nothing less than a slap in the face to Western North Carolina communities that he pledged to support. If Trump really cares about effectively managing disaster response, then he should submit a funding request to Congress to replenish the disaster fund. Eliminating FEMA is not the answer. It will put lives in jeopardy across the United States and severely hamper ongoing disaster efforts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Montana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to extend and revise my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from Montana is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to congratulate my dear friend Jim Duncan on his well-earned retirement as president of the Billings Clinic Foundation. For 3 decades, Jim served the great folks of the Treasure State, advocating tirelessly for rural health care access and the expansion of community wellness programs. Jim grew the foundation's endowments from $3 million to an astounding $150 million, funds that will benefit the community for generations to come. He also played a key role in introducing innovation and excellence in Montana health services, helping to bring new cancer, cardiac, pediatric, psychiatric, and trauma care to eastern Montana. Jim's advocacy will be missed, but I know the foundation will be left in good hands with Nicole Mailing at the helm. He led with integrity, vision, and compassion. I wish him and his wife, Heidi, a well-deserved, adventure-filled retirement. Congratulations again, Jim. Mr. Speaker, I yield.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
I request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under the economic policies of Donald Trump and Republicans, America is now in decline. For the first time in 3 years, we have negative GDP growth. That means our economy actually shrank this year. It takes a special kind of stupid to take 12 consecutive quarters of positive economic growth and make it go negative. And we also know overall inflation has also increased. And Trump and Republicans want to make it worse. They want to pass the big, ugly bill that's going to cut off health care for over 16 million Americans, all in service of massive tax breaks to billionaires. Tell them to take their heads out of the sand and to stop harming the American people. Trump and Republicans should be working for you, not for billionaires. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to pay tribute to the extraordinary life and dedicated service of John W. Grodke, a proud resident of Eden, New York, who recently passed away on June 19, 2025. John proudly served in the United States Marine Corps, where he dedicated several years of his life to upholding the values, honor, courage, and commitment. During his time in uniform, his service exemplified a deep sense of patriotism and dedication to our country. After serving in the military, John also served as the commander of the Hamburg American Legion Post 527, where he played a leading role, being a voice for the organization and representing his members effectively. He devoted his time advocating for veterans in the community and ensuring their families received the care they deeply deserved. John was not only an exemplary Marine, but a strong leader and a wonderful husband, father, and friend. He was the beloved husband of Karen Grodke, loving father of Matthew, Keith, Gregory, and Joshua, and the cherished grandfather of 6 grandchildren. John W. Grodke leaves behind a legacy of service and unwavering dedication to his community and his country. His accomplishments in leadership leave a lasting impact and set a gold standard that will continue to inspire generations to come. The Western New York community was blessed to have such a remarkable resident. May he rest in peace, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to sound the alarm on the impending closure of the Quartz Hill Post Office and who knows how many other contract postal units across the country. On June 1st, Stan Boylan, a veteran and the owner of the Quartz Hill Post Office, received a written termination notice informing him that his post office was scheduled to close. Now, my family loves the Quartz Hill Post Office. My wife was devastated to hear this news, and we're not alone. It has been a staple of our community for over 70 years and services tens of thousands of my constituents. I say we do not know the scale of closures because even after I submitted an inquiry to the acting Postmaster General, we have not yet been given a straight answer. What we do know is that the White House has been trying to absorb this historically independent agency and has given DOJ the green light to cut USPS staff and gut services. Let me be clear. The United States Postal Service does not use taxpayer dollars for operating costs. Reducing post office locations will lead to slower service, longer wait times, and delays in receiving packages, medications, and other necessary deliveries. I urge the Postmaster General to reverse the decision to terminate the Quartz Hill Post Office contract, and I yield back. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, this week I am introducing the No Tax Dollars for Riots Act, a bill that will assure that public funding is not used to create the sort of horrifying scenes that we just witnessed in Los Angeles. In the wake of the LA riots, we have learned that a group claiming nonprofit status, known as CHIRLA, received $34 million in state funding and some federal funding as well. This group played a central role in organizing the riots, providing real-time locations to the rioters of where federal officers could be found. Several of these federal officers were subsequently assaulted with bricks and Molotov cocktails. My bill will assure that an organization like this, whose officers are officers, or of organizing, promoting, encouraging, participating in, or carrying on a riot under Section 111 or 2101 of Title 18 of the U.S. Code loses their nonprofit status and is ineligible for federal funding going forward. This is a common sense step that will prevent the sort of lawlessness that we saw in Los Angeles from reappearing in our state or elsewhere in the country. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
For up to 1 minute and extend and revise my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to talk about an issue that's hurting our country that we aren't talking about enough, and that's the uncertainty of this administration's student visa process. We have students doing groundbreaking research that are being forced to leave the country, and students that last academic year contributed to $43 billion to the U.S. economy. And the administration is trying to prevent institutions from enrolling top international students altogether. The United States has welcomed international students for decades, and some of them include world leaders, founders of billion-dollar companies here, and over 40% of the founders of America's leading AI companies, just as a few examples. We're shooting ourselves in the foot, and instead, why don't we go back to being a place that welcomes students to dream big and conduct groundbreaking research, no matter where they are coming from? Why don't we become a place that unites people of all backgrounds and welcomes the best and brightest? Because that's something that makes our country great. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to congratulate Angola, Indiana's Trine University women's softball team on winning the 2025 NCAA Division III softball championship. Under the leadership of head coach Donnie Dolphison, the Thunder gave the championship game their all. This game was a nail-biter as the team was down by 1 run throughout most of the game. On top of that, the team's star pitcher, Alexis Michon, pitched the entire game despite an injury early on. Even with this adversity, the team rallied together and kept their determination to win. Everything turned around for the Thunder in the 6th inning when Emma Lee crushed a 3-run homer, and this team sailed to a 3-1 victory. Trine University women's softball has continued to make Indiana's 3rd district proud, as this is their 2nd national title in 3 years. Their perfect postseason is a testament to the hard work and talent of this team. These women have set an example for all of us as the achievements that are possible without unwavering dedication and strong leadership. To the 2025 Trine University softball team, congratulations on this monumental accomplishment. I know each of you will continue to pursue excellence and set an example for others. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, address the body for 1 minute without objection.
Without objection, the gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to recognize Sister Teresa Lynch, who will be retiring from Santa Ana St. Anne School. She served as a teacher for 31 years and principal for 19 years at St. Genevieve and St. Anne School. She also worked to improve the lives of the incarcerated prisoners at the California Institute for Women in Chino, California. And she also co-directed the Get on the Bus program that connected children with their incarcerated parents. Thank you, Sister Teresa, for showing us all what it means to care for the community. Thank you for your friendship. Congratulations on your retirement. And I suspect now as a retiree, you will be busier than ever. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I yield.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Celebration of National Dairy Month and to honor the hardworking dairy farmers of California, our nation's leading dairy producer. In my district, which encompasses Tulare, Fresno, Kings, and Kern counties, we are proud to be the epicenter of dairy production. Tulare County alone holds the title of the largest dairy producing county in America, home to 500,000 dairy cows and 222 dairies, and some of the largest dairy processing plants. Most of these dairies are family-owned enterprises. I myself personally know the efforts it takes to operate these family businesses. I am proud of the legacy of my own family members that are in the dairy industry who brought their farms to the Central Valley. Even our region's large-scale operations remain rooted in family traditions, reflecting the dedication and perseverance of our agricultural communities. Together, These dairies contribute 1/5 of our nation's milk supply, producing everything from butter to ice cream, nourishing families, and bringing joy to countless households across America. To our dairy farmers, thank you for your tireless efforts to feed our nation. Your work sustains us, and it is an honor to stand in your quarter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to recognize the life of Ms. Marzie Thomas. Ms. Thomas served as my district director in my Memphis office since 2013, and she came to my office first in 2007. She was an outstanding human being who cared about everybody that came into her office who needed constituent services. She was a special person in Memphis because she represented what people do in Memphis who are really good people who care about others. She cared about her family, Alonzo Thomas, her husband who passed away in 2024, her two children, her grandchild, and her sister who survived her. She cared about her church, East Trigg Baptist Church, a famous church where the minister was, Reverend Brewster, was known for his gospel songs that he wrote and sang. She was in the choir and a beautiful voice, and she was very dedicated to her church and Pastor Beasley. And she was concerned about our country, serving for a long time in my office. She was just a wonderful person. She was a great friend to me. She cared about me greatly, and I miss her much. She had a life well lived, and I was thankful and fortunate to have her work with me in the office. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Hawaii seek recognition?
Consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman from Hawaii is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just days ago, a Hawaii veteran, Se Jun Park, said goodbye to his family, his elderly mother with dementia, his 2 adult children, his home. Mr. Park was shot twice in combat, earning a Purple Heart for his bravery. Yet despite his sacrifice, ICE officers gave him no choice but to self-deport back to South Korea after nearly 50 years. Mr. Park served, he fought, he belonged, and yes, he made mistakes, as many veterans struggling with PTSD do, but he turned his life around. That's the reality for many veterans. They fight hard for this country and still face battles back home, too often alone. Now Republicans are pushing a funding bill that would abandon even more veterans like Mr. Park. It shifts critical care from the VA to private corporation and makes it harder for women and immigrant veterans to get the services they need. This bill isn't an efficiency, it's cruelty. I will not stand by while Republicans turn our veterans into bargaining chips. When we fail our veterans, we're not just breaking a promise, we're breaking our people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. 10 years ago today, our nation made a remarkable step towards equality with the legalization of gay marriage. A day that came after decades of advocacy by individuals and organizations across the country, including Garden State Equality and my home state of New Jersey. But now the rights of our friends and neighbors are under continuous attack from the Trump administration, including by cutting HIV treatment and prevention and rolling back anti-discrimination protections. More than 1.3 million Americans have sought life-saving help by making the call to 988, yet this administration has eliminated funding for those specialized services. These are blatant attempts to harm the LGBTQ community that has already overcome so much and made incredible strides towards equality. And it is here in this chamber that we should be standing beside them, fighting for them, because when we are elected to serve here in the People's House, it is our obligation to fight for everyone that we have the privilege of representing. That is what I will always do, and what I urge my colleagues across the aisle to do as well. Thank you, and I yield back.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3, 2025, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Schweikert, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're doing the really exciting discussion with my buddy over here of how CBO actually does scoring on things and trying to explain that some of the things we consider absurd are actually our fault because it's the law that we've passed to tell CBO how to do the scoring. First off, an apology to everyone because this one's going to go a little longer than normal. So, yeah, I know. Everyone grab a cup of coffee or something, and hopefully the Sergeant of Arms. We're apparently not allowed to drink coffee on the floor, so whatever happens, don't get caught, right? I'm going to try 3 things tonight. I will upset a number of folks. I'm sorry. My math will be accurate because we've spent the last couple days double checking it. I'm going to try to do something a little insane. I'm going to walk folks through the Social Security Actuary Report. And we're just going to do some of the most basic parts of it so folks understand what the reality is. Number 2, I'm going to walk through actually something that really bothers me because I have a number of politicians on the left and the right who spend day and night making up math. Can you believe that, Mr. Speaker? They attack the CBO, they attack the Joint Tax Committee, this and that. I'm going to walk us through parts of the accuracy and what we call the variance report done by the Congressional Budget Office and try to demonstrate, yeah, there's mistakes. They're actually more accurate than most of the outside groups. So that's uncomfortable because one of the other things I'm going to touch on, and this is tough, is we have aspirational documents coming from the White House, from our own folks here on what growth can be, and we can actually do remarkable growth, but we got to do very difficult policies to make it work. Are we going to do talent-based immigration? Are we going to do incentives to automate, to modernize, to use technology, to even use AI? And my fear is we want to take credit for very high growth numbers. You know, GDP grows this, but we're not willing to do the hard lift of the policy. And then with that, I'm going to explain why that's so important. Because the growth of debt, the drivers of debt, is the thing it's hard to tell the truth about. I'm going to show some charts in a little bit, Mr. Speaker, that show over the next 10 years, interest is the #1 driver of debt, then healthcare, Medicare almost exclusively, and it's hard to explain that it's actually like a 65-35 now. The 22-some trillion dollars that are baseline and then stack everything else on it that's going to be borrowed over the next 10 years. About 65% of that's just interest. Is this country, our federal government, is an insurance company with an army. And we don't have enough cash in the bank to pay for all the promises we made as part of that insurance coverage. So let's have at it, Mr. Speaker. I keep bringing this chart just because it's a really simple visual. Think of the people who almost attack us in our hallways. How can you be wanting to cut spending? And you show them this chart saying baseline spending, $86 trillion over the next 10 years. And all we're talking about on the House reconciliation budget, and my understanding is the Senate, our good friends down the hallway, their cuts in spending are even more anemic, was 2%. Well, 2.3. 86 trillion is the baseline spending for the next 10 years. We were trying in the House reconciliation budget to cut $2 trillion, and that caused absolutely panic because Washington, D.C. is about one thing, it's about money, and when so much of America makes its money off of D.C. policy, this has caused absolute panic, but it's a fraction. Because when you see what's happened on the new data on what's happening in healthcare costs, we got some new data today that the numbers are even worse. Almost no one has actually started to do the math that the fact that the Social Security Medicare Actuary Report from 4 days ago actually has an 11% cut coming in the Medicare Trust Fund in 2033. That's not actually in the baseline debt numbers. Are we just going to pretend that we didn't get older as a society? So let's actually walk through. Mr. Speaker, I've done this chart for a decade. About 74% of all spending is on autopilot. It's what we call mandatory. It's interest, it's Social Security, it's Medicare, it's Medicaid, it's other promises that are built into the formula. Members of Congress almost never, ever, ever, ever get the chance to vote on any of this red. The only time it will ever really come up is if we have a reconciliation budget. All the blue, defense and non-defense, is 25, 26% of our spending. Every dime of it is borrowed. Please, anyone who cares, get this in your head. Every dime, other than some of the things in a reconciliation budget, every dime a member of Congress will vote on, many for their entire careers, is borrowed money. So you see this 26% that's in blue, that's defense and non-defense discretionary. This year, we're on track for every dollar we bring in tax receipts. That's corporate taxes, that's individual taxes, that's everything. We're going to spend $1 in, $1.39. $1.39 out the door. Does anyone see a math problem? So, a month ago, Moody's actually downgraded U.S. debt. So now the three big rating agencies have lowered our credit. We actually have 18 states in America that have a higher credit rating than the federal government. But if anyone bothered and sort of had to get it through your Bloomberg terminal or pay a subscription, we're blessed to have a terminal, and actually read, it was actually really well done. There was lots of details. Yes, they got attacked by people who want to keep spending money saying, stop, you can't downgrade U.S. sovereign debt. Well, the other two rating agencies had done it years earlier. The punchline in there, in less than 9 years, and this was assuming interest rates stayed stable, in 2034, 30% of all tax receipts just covered interest. If interest rates went up 1%, Mr. Speaker, 1% in 2034, 45% of all U.S. tax receipts pay interest. Are we paying attention? And yet, the first words I'll get from my brothers and sisters on the left is, well, just raise taxes. I will show over and over here that if you look at times when we've had high marginal tax rates, low marginal tax rates, we basically always get about 17 to 18, sometimes 18.5% of the economy in tax receipts. There's your problem, is that split. So right now, if we're sitting in the almost 18% of the economy we're taking in taxes, but you're spending 24, and understand, over the next few years, it goes from 24 to 25 to 26. That gap is the annual deficit that gets piled onto the debt. And we have lots of charts here that actually start to show, let's see if I can find my favorite one here, that when we actually raise, I hid it in the back, so we're going to do that as a whole section. Okay. How many understand we borrow $6 billion a day? How many understand in 9 years we're borrowing over $10 billion a day? So right now that means we borrow what? $72,000 a second. In 9 years, we're functionally borrowing over $100,000 a second. And the reason I try to break it down like that is I'm trying to find a way to make numbers like this, absolutely crazy numbers, work. Okay, so you have that. So my Democrat brothers and sisters have legislation they've introduced over the years. They've never actually brought it to the floor, even when they controlled this body, controlled the White House. So it gives you a sense. Economic study, go on Manhattan Institute, Riedel. It's about a year and a half old. They did the scoring on all the Democrats' tax proposals. And here's your problem. increasing taxes when you did actually all of them. And I'm going to do this in a couple fashions. You basically got to the point that when you did all the corporate, the estate, the individual, and then you did the economic effects, you got about 1.5% of the economy. So all the tax hikes, every time you have someone over on that side say, just raise taxes. You do every one of their tax proposals, you get 0.5% of the economy, 1.5%. Hopefully everyone knows what the joke is. We're going to borrow 7.3% of the economy this year, and in 9 years, we're borrowing 9% of the economy. How do we tell the truth to the American people that we're going to have to embrace things that are actually hopeful, but the cost of health care, and it's always fascinating. I always thought I'd get beaten up for saying this behind the microphone, and shockingly, we've had people being remarkably kind to us. My Joint Economic Committee, our economists, and it was a hard report to write, a couple years ago, wrote a major study saying, what does obesity cost America? And it's not Republican or Democrat, it's just what we are. Now, it means every time you say that, did you make all the people that make money off certain foods, off of certain health care, off of other things nervous? We came up with a number 2 years ago. It was $9.1 trillion of additional health care spending over 10 years. Okay. Milken, now this one's a few years old, did a study that said 47% of all U.S. health care spending was associated with obesity. Okay. Is that Republican or Democrat? It's just the math. And it's something we could do together around here. How do we help our brothers and sisters be healthier so they live longer, they could have more maybe family formation, live a life, participate in the economy, and use a hell of a lot less health care? And you know the perversity around here when you start talking about maybe we need to modernize how we do agriculture in America, what we grow, because we concentrate functionally on like 5 crops. What should we do? Is it moral? This is a question, and I've been attacked by Democrats on this. Is it moral to give an EBT card, modern food stamps, to someone to go buy onion rings? I love onion rings. It's one of my addictions, working on getting off of it. But is it moral with taking hard-earned money, rare resources, remember, it's borrowed money now, and say, go eat crap? It's now the people that sell onion rings come and lobby us and attack us and say, people should have their choice. They should, with their own money. But the fact of the matter is, when we looked at some of the data of the 7 million prime-age males that are missing in America, we have a data set that says about half of that population may be missing from the labor force, missing from the American labor force. Not because of drugs, not because of video games, but because of health, because of obesity. Are we allowed to talk about it? Mr. Speaker, a bit of trivia. So let's do something I consider wonderfully funny and amusing. In the last 20 years, what's the only success that has happened in the United States of helping young people get healthier? Remember, under Michelle Obama's initiatives with President Obama, I think we spent, it was $16 billion or $36 billion, but some number like that, and it had absolutely no success. This was the dietary issues, the food issues, trying to get young people to go exercise. Anyone guess? Come on, this is a play-at-home game. It was Pokemon Go. I know it sounds crazy, but the gamification actually was the one great example of success the last couple decades of helping young people get healthier. What if we took that knowledge of, hey, these incentives do work, and actually legalized that and made that part of how we deliver healthcare services or how we allow insurers to provide incentives? Because the ACA, Obamacare, is a finance bill. It's who gets subsidized and who has to pay. And you have 3 age groups and smoking. Could you be creative enough to add a 5th category? It says you can provide a series of these sorts of incentives You know, wear the digital ring, wear the wrist, go walk 5,000 steps, and at the end of the month, we're going to give you something. Is that Republican or Democrat? Or is it just using data trying to keep our brothers and sisters healthier? Because the stock answers, well, just raise taxes on rich people. The math doesn't get you anything close. Now, it may make you feel better. You know, it may make you feel better, but I'm going to show you numbers that should scare you half to death. And, oh, you okay? All right, so let's continue to try to run through this. Healthcare expenses, and we're going to have to update our charts because we got one just a couple hours ago and we didn't have a chance. It actually had the spending growth on healthcare over the next decade actually accelerating again. So here's part of my problem. Nominal, which means before inflation. We actually have domestic productivity growing at 4.3%. Over the next decade. We have healthcare growing at 5.8. It's geeky, but that margin keeps separating and separating and separating. And unless we're willing to do policy, whether it be technology, incentives to stay healthy, these sorts of things, if that separation continues, the debt picture is actually worse. Mr. Speaker, at some point I'm going to show you a slide here that if you actually take some of the policy we're working on, the baseline of between now and 2035 of the $22 trillion we're supposed to borrow, some of the potential financing costs of what the Senate's doing right now, the higher interest rates, we come close. We're not exactly there. We come close to doubling U.S. sovereign debt over the next decade. What took us 240 years, 240 years, and we functionally double it in the next decade. So, now let's get to the really uncomfortable stuff. And I got to admit, I'm only about 2/3 through the Social Security Actuary Report. I have one on my desk, which is highlighters and little questions and things I have to get my economists to go back and help me understand, and some where I actually don't like some of the math I see. I'm gonna try something, and we're gonna try to build a chart on this. This is a crazy math, but we see it in the report. You'll have lots of activists say, well, just open up immigration. That will take care of the Social Security shortfall. Remember, the report says in 2033, so what is that, 7-8 years from now, there's a 23% cut coming in Social Security checks, meaning we will double, and this is we've had witnesses that did explain this to us, we will double senior poverty after 2033. Are we ready to do that? Is that moral? And yet, I will get folks who will say, well, if we just open up immigration, well, it turns out that's actually not the math. Because one of the real reasons they moved up the date of the exhaustion of the Social Security Trust Fund was actually flattening of wage growth. Turns out there's no free option here. So we have some charts and those things that show here's people who are undocumented in America. They're working under stolen Social Security numbers. They're giving into the system, but they're never going to get out. And then you look at the suppression of wage growth. I know this is geeky, but I need to sort of lay a marker on it. The suppression of wage growth. So when you bring in millions of people across the border that have similar skill sets, and they're often willing to sell their skill sets for even less money, Social Security Actuary Report's now modeling a flattening of wage growth. That's one of the things that's actually shortened the life of the Social Security Trust Fund by a year. So next time someone says, oh, we just open up the borders, that will take care of the Social Security Trust Fund. Turns out it doesn't work that way. You actually didn't get anything from it. You did a suppression of working people's wages, and this one takes us out about a decade. And I don't know why people don't think, they don't understand these most basic economic, I mean, we all went to our high school econ class, right? And so here's what's coming. You got the 23% cut coming in 2033. If you're watching this and you don't plan to be around in 2033, you don't have to care. But the one that's had almost no discussion about is the Medicare Trust Fund is gone in 2033. Meaning if it lives off of its income, its tax receipts from the FICA taxes, it's still 11% cut. So next time we get someone here saying, we need more money for our hospitals, we need more money for outpatient surgeries, we need more money for hospice care, point out to them in 7 years, there's an ugly, ugly cut coming. This 11% shortfall isn't even in our long-run CBO projections yet, because a year ago, give you an idea how these numbers eroded in 1 year, I think it was 2054 was last year's actuary report when the trust fund was gone. Okay, so how many people over the last week, because this has been out for almost a week now, have you seen come behind these microphones and say, maybe we should all work together, or actually do something that's mathematically honest, or actually just even tell our voters the truth that in 7 years you're getting a 23% cut in your Social Security check, and by the way, another 11% cut in your hospital coverage, and other things in the Medicare, because the Medicare Part A trust fund is gone. For those that don't understand, and that's most of us, in Medicare, the portion of your payroll tax that goes to Medicare, about 40% of it is covered by the trust fund. That's the hospital portion, as we typically refer to it. The rest of it actually comes out of the general fund. And one of the most difficult numbers I have in my data set here, because this is the one that I see people get upset about. What's the primary driver of U.S. debt? Interest? Healthcare. For every dollar you put into Medicare, you're getting $6 to $7 back. That delta is uncomfortable to talk about, but it turns out to be that and interest are the primary drivers. All right. And you start to actually look at some more, and I put this chart together just because I thought it was really interesting, because we finally actually have really good data that's been designed on what happened during the Biden administration, having the border open. And, we got some direct effects of, hey, we got a little bit more tax receipts and potential effects over the time. But it turns out its deficit effects are more than 2 times. More than 2 times because of the consumption of services. It turns out when someone tells you, oh, this is going to grow the economy, it's not in the economic literature. It may be in your aspirational, it may be in your heart, how you feel. It's not in the economic literature. Tell the truth about the math. National health expenditures as a percentage of GDP. Remember how a couple moments ago I told you we're trying to figure out, we just got another report that the growth of healthcare spending we expect to pop almost 3% more than modeled. That's a lot of money. But here's the punchline. We estimate this year, right now, we're right here, we're spending about 18% of the entire economy on healthcare. In 9 years, it's over 20%. Those differences are monstrous. When that's that much, you're functionally seeing, if that's functionally a 12.8% growth in the cost of delivering healthcare in that 9-year span. And this is going to tie into why I'm talking about some of our growth rate projections. How do you hit these folks that are running around saying, David, we're going to grow at 3, 4, 5% GDP growth. At the same time, interests and expenditures are chewing up everything around us. How does that math work? And then I'm going to show you some of the demographics. I'm going to probably say this twice just so it starts to bleed in. Today, we have the same number of 18-year-olds as we had 20 years ago. We have double the number of people 65 and up. So we functionally have this, we have the same number of 18-year-olds, And it's no one's fault. It's not Republican and Democrat. Starting in 1990, U.S. fertility rates rolled over. We have a shortage of young people in America. Tell me how I grow the economy if you're not going to let me do things like automation of ports, automated rail, AI, technology, allowing AI when it has the right data to be able to prescribe. And you people go, oh, I don't like that. Fine. Tell me how much poorer you're willing to live. It's economics. If I can't grow the economy and yet I'm being buried in debt service and increased costs of providing the services, tell me how I'm to pay for it. There's a path where I can make this math. I can't pay it off. I can stabilize it and make this another American century. But damn it, how do I do it in a body that's just terrified of telling the truth about math or just basic economics? This is the reality. This is our latest report. In 2033, 20.3% of the economy will just be healthcare. And considering government is functionally the primary payer, I think we're well over half of all healthcare spending coming out of the trust fund and the general fund. Anyone see a problem? Remember a moment ago I showed you that the Social Security Medicare actuary report said there's 11% in 2033 cut coming. Are we going to let that happen? Probably not. Are we going to reach into the general fund and pay for it? Probably. It's not in the debt projections yet. The scale of this is off the charts. And back to the math problem. And if I'm making someone unhappy, be mad at the math, not me. Be mad at all the people who've never told you the truth with a calculator. How do I save my future? Remember, my little boy turned 3 years old yesterday. I have a 9-year-old. Yes, they're adopted. It's a miracle. My wife's my age. Yes, we've screwed up my retirement. It's the most fun I've ever had in my life. My child will be the first generation to live poorer than his mommy and daddy. Hey, great job, America. This is our morality. And people would say, no, it's going to be great. Great. Okay, I hope it's great. Tell me how I do it in the math. Walk me through the economics. Walk me through what we're going to do to maximize GDP growth, what we're going to do for change productivity. Well, we're going to just grow. Okay, tell me how. And that's our problem right now. We're using these wonderful aspirational words and we're not doing any of the policy. And the reality of it, Social Security and Medicare and net interest account for 80% of the spending growth. How many protesters, if you're a member of Congress, how many protesters did you have in your office this last couple days? You can't review, you can't go after waste and fraud in Medicaid. Medicare Advantage, the Wall Street Journal has done a 5-part series that if you add it all up is $2 trillion of waste and fraud over 10 years. Well, it's hard. You can't actually talk about that. If we can't do the work, how do you save the country? How do you save my kids' future? How do you save your own retirement? Or maybe we can just keep lying to each other, lying to the public, because the public really doesn't want to hear these things. There is a path to make this math work. But you keep telling me we're going to take off on productivity, but then you see the charts of available young people to participate in the labor force, and the number keeps falling and falling and falling. Remember, the smallest group of 18-year-olds as a percentage of population in U.S. history. And next year's is even smaller. And the year after that is even smaller. And the year after that is even smaller. But David, we're going to grow like crazy. We can, but you have to do policies that maximize productivity. Oh, but productivity might cause creative destruction. We're not allowed to do free market economics anymore. Remember, we're populists now. If you embrace that, you're going to drive this country. We'll still be greater than any country on earth, but we're going to give it so much. Wealth is, prosperity is moral. The growth is moral. And we're killing ourselves, but we're making promises that aren't in the data. They're not on the charts. So, You have an idiot like me that gets behind the microphone week after week after week. I'm not smart, but I'm good at math. And try to explain, saying there's ways to make it work. So 1 month ago, after almost a year's worth of work, I chaired the Joint Economic Committee. I'm number 4 in Ways and Means. I chair oversight. It's public now. The press broke the story. We've been doing investigations after the Wall Street Journal did that 5 major series on Medicare Advantage, the amount of fraud, the people being diagnosed with diseases they don't have, people being dumped on VA even though they had the Medicare Advantage insurance, people being dumped on hospice care. If you don't know about it, grab your computer, Google the Wall Street Journal MA. MedPAC report. I've come to this floor year after year with, I'm sometimes thinking, Mr. Speaker, I'm the only idiot here who reads the MedPAC report. Just grab the damn, now it's like this, but it's not a hard read. And in there it will say, hey, when we started Medicare Advantage in 2005, it was designed to come in at 95% of the cost of fee-for-service, but its model was, we're going to incentivize the folks that manage the care to make money by helping you be healthier. The incentive was, we're going to help populations be healthier. MedPAC report from the beginning of this year, today it comes at 120% of fee-for-service. Just that delta from the 95 to 120%, over 10 years is like $2 trillion. So think, we're knifing each other right now, trying to figure out how to finance as much of this reconciliation budget as we can. So I'm an idiot, as I've been told by my wife over and over, because I thought we cared. So we spent 6 months writing the modernization, the Medicare, the Better Medicare Act, Medicare Advantage, to make it so it incentivizes to help our brothers and sisters who are 65 and up who choose Medicare Advantage, which is 55% of the population, to get services so they're healthier. The Joint Economic Committee economists say over 10 years, it's $1.76 trillion of savings over 10 years. Preliminary score from our conversations with CBO, it's not in writing, but pure preliminary, $1.84 trillion, making it the largest savings bill in U.S. history. And it doesn't take away a single service. It fixes the misalignment in the system. Mr. Speaker, how many co-sponsors do I have? The bill has been introduced for 1 month. Remember, we're tough. We're going to help stop this borrowing. We're going to take on the debt. I have 0 co-sponsors. We have visited almost 100 members of Congress and their offices. Oh, David, this is uncomfortable. It has big words. Oh, David, it has the word Medicare. I beg of you, understand the scale of this debt. I have people now that won't even look me in the eye as I walk down the hallway because they're fearful I might ask them again and again and again, will you sponsor this? You tell me you care. Help us. Help us do the right thing. And yet, if I try to show what's going on, remember, our baseline is over the next 10 years, we expect to spend $14.67 trillion on Medicare Advantage, not Medicare, just the Medicare Advantage portion. All we're trying to do is save about 10% of that. And that's the alignment of incentives. Stop telling me how much you care. Stop telling me you're a budget hawk. I'm a budget hawk. I care about the budget, but God forbid, I'm not putting my name on something that actually does something because that's hard. I'm the guy in the 50-50 district. I'm in one of the most competitive districts in America, and yet I'm willing to stand up behind this microphone and tell the truth and actually put it on paper. So, my economists, we did a model over the next 10 years with what's happening demographically in America. We have a shortage of young people. President Trump said something that was brilliant on the campaign trail. He said it is insane. We educate people, we send them home to come, and then we send them home with their degrees from the American universities to compete with us. That sparked an idea, and then we got our economists to do the modeling. It creates about 150, 160 billion of additional tax receipts in the 10-year window, but in the second 10-year window, it explodes. So we wrote an immigration reform bill moving the American immigration system to a talent-based system. But it has the word immigration in it. So it scares the hell out of the political class because the reporters will lie about it. The activists on Twitter or X or whatever it is will lie about it. But the economics are incredibly important. If you're going to move this country to raise its productivity so we can raise wages, so we actually can survive what's happening in the actuarial reports of Medicare and Social Security, guess what? You almost can't close the numbers unless you do something like this. And the reason I'm doing this is we added the president's gold cards, but the skills-based. And I get people saying, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. How many of you have a Dr. Patel? It's meant to be funny. I'm from Scottsdale, one of the greatest medical communities in America. And a bunch of our great, amazing talent has come in from all over the world. Stop bathing in folklore and start bathing in math. So, our third bill to pay for the reconciliation budget. This one is less of a cut. This is more using data to find where the hell's all the cash? Turns out, if you add up it all, which there's no way the Appropriations Committee or the White House, there's $1.5 trillion sitting in accounts up and down government. That was appropriated 3 years ago, but they never built it. There's a great example of hundreds of millions of dollars that were set aside for one state. It's in the account to build a bridge. They chose not to build that bridge. Cash is still sitting there. We call it total discretionary balances subject to rescission. Okay, we call it forgotten funds. You know we're paying interest on that money. Almost every dime of this was borrowed money, and it's sitting, and some of it's been sitting in accounts for years. Why is it so hard? We have the legislation. I've introduced the legislation, line item by line item by line item, saying, let's just go grab that cash. Even if you just went back to no year money, or maybe the ones that are just a couple years out, it's $500 billion. Grab that cash and bring it back and put it under Treasury. And if we as members of Congress want to appropriate it again. But the forgotten funds. So I just gave you 3 pieces of legislation. I gave you fixing Medicare Advantage, alignment of the incentives, moving to a talent-based immigration system, which in the long run is one of the most powerful things we can do for GDP growth, for productivity. Capturing the forgotten funds, I just paid for most of the reconciliation bill. Wouldn't that solve a bunch of our problems around here? Wouldn't that solve a bunch of the fighting? Wouldn't that solve a bunch of the stress? And we're going to borrow how much? Because this year we're going to borrow $2.2 trillion. At the end of 2026, if we do what I think the Senate's going to try to jam us, that's $2.5, $2.6 trillion of borrowing that year. But David, we're going to have all this magical growth. Look, I'm a single office. Now, I accept. I'm a senior member. I have staff. I have really smart economists. But in 3 bills, I just brought you, without cutting a service to anyone, I just brought you $3.3 trillion of savings. And not a single co-sponsor in Congress. I'm going to try to do this next little section here, and I don't want to be a jerk. Let's see if I can. I'm going to hurt some people's feelings, But the math is important, and why the math is important is there are solutions. But and what reason I'm doing this is, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, I had a member I was talking to, great member, brilliant on their area of specialty, really smart. I've spent my whole life doing budgets and healthcare finance, and a few other weird things. David, CBO is always wrong, Congressional Budget Office. They make up things. It's way off. Okay, for anyone who keeps your staff or you keep telling you that, this is what you call a variance report. CBO puts it out every year. I know every staffer and every member of Congress grabbed it in January and actually read the data. If you look at the calculations, and I'm embarrassed I didn't actually bring one of the board, which probably is good because it was really obnoxious. What did happen to that board? CBO projected when we did the 2017 tax reform, 2018, 2019, just before the pandemic, they were like 99.5, 99% accurate. Don't tell anyone because it'll make it harder for us to lie around here. And you get members saying, but over the next 5 years, they weren't accurate at all. Does anyone remember there was this little thing called COVID? Does anyone remember what Congress and the world actually did? We dumped how much cash into the world market? So you're accurate to hear, and then all of a sudden we dump how much cash? Do you think there's a chance when you borrow trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, pump it out in the economy, you don't have your tax collections go up? Oh, but David, they didn't project that. They didn't predict that. Oh, come on, people, stop it. Because even now, when we get back to baseline, after we get beyond COVID, they were still remarkably accurate. I found the chart. It was hidden back there. It's on a smaller board. The fact of the matter, what they projected, and then what actually happened, and this is actually 2018, not 16. So I found a printing error. 99.5% accuracy. Now you may not, and look, they're not always accurate. On what they projected for the clean energy, tax credits, and inflation reduction, they missed by miles because they didn't actually pay enough attention that they were uncapped. There's a number of things where they absolutely screwed up, but the fact of the matter, on tax collections, the numbers have been good, and we need a scorekeeper. What happens if My grandfather used to have this saying, it doesn't matter how you play the game, it's who keeps score. He thought that was hysterical. How do we convince the American people we're serious about economic growth, productivity, taking on the debt and deficits, and not bankrupting their future when we spend almost every day saying, well, we don't like the scorekeeping? And then you look at every outside group, the Tax Foundation, Yale Model Foundation, all these others, and it turns out CBO was more accurate than they were. I'm not standing here to be a defender of them. I'm being actually a defender of my brothers and sisters here. Please, I know it makes our lives easier when we can attack the scorekeeper. We can say, the scorekeeper didn't get it right, therefore pay no attention when they say we're trying to add $3-4 trillion of debt. We're better than that. And there's a reason so much of the economic press is just mocking us and making fun of us. I understand it's good politics. You get to go home, get up in front of an audience that's not reading the economic press and say, well, they didn't get the accurate right. Let's treat our voters like they're adults. They understand what's going on. Look, these are the scores from Yale Budget, from Penn Wharton, from Congressional Budget Office, from Joint Tax Policy Center, American Enterprise Institution, Tax Foundation. And then here's what we're telling people. Is every other PhD economist wrong? Because it becomes an excuse not to do the things I was just complaining about when an idiot like me comes and says, I found you $3.3 trillion in savings. David, we don't have to do those hard pieces of legislation. We don't have to explain those bills to our constituents. We don't have to take on the lobbyists who are going to be all upset with us. We'll just tell people that it pays for itself. So everyone else is wrong because it makes our life as policymakers easier. But somehow, we're going to have magic growth, magical thinking, when just today, parts of the latest census data came out. Population 65 and older rose by 3.1% in the last year. Population 18 years old, under 18, decreased by 0.2%. I'm trying to make an argument that I love the partisanship. I love a good fight with my Democrat brothers and sisters. But what happens when the debt and deficits are demographics? But if we can blame the other side, we'll just do this ping pong back and forth. They're in charge, we're in charge, we're in charge, they're in charge. We'll blame each other, and then we're going to have a failed bond auction. Interest rates are going to explode. Remember, there's data sets, and I presented them here on the floor, that just a single point of interest going up over the next decade wipes out almost all the good we're trying to do extending the tax reform of 2017. Mr. Speaker, there's a way to make this work. And I'm mentally just exhausted. Maybe I need to consume more coffee. Maybe I need to stop caring so much because I'm really worried. There's a way to make this work. There's hope. But what happens when no one will hear a word you're saying because it requires doing hard stuff and pisses off some lobbyists or some group that's in our office that wants us to regulate their competition's business or give them something? We used to be the party of fiscal sanity. I still think we are. We can get there. We can do it. Maybe we just need to understand the math. That I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Davidson, for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the topic of this special order.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I'm here today to talk about central bank digital currencies. A lot of people don't necessarily know what a central bank digital currency is, so we'll start with a definition. A central bank digital currency begins with the central bank. The central bank in the United States is the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve manages our currency, and they manage settlement between banks. So when banks have to pay each other, they do it directly, but a lot of times they manage it through the central bank. Central banks around the world, whether in the United States or the European Union, China's central bank, pick your thing, most countries have a central bank. Switzerland has the Bank of International Settlement, and their central bank is essentially the central banker to the central banks. So when central banks pay each other, they broker the transaction through the Bank of International Settlement. So what is the digital currency? Digital sort of self-explanatory, and the currency is a means of payment. Traditionally, you think of the system of money is as old as people. The right to transact predates any government. People would transact with one another before we had a government. It's an inherent natural right. As our founders recognized, we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. One of the ways we pursue happiness is by transacting with each other. We buy things, or we make money from selling things. And in the natural order, there's nobody between you and the person you want to do business with. In cash, that's still the case. When you hand a $20 bill to somebody for, sweeping your driveway, or $100 bill for shoveling your driveway in the snow, or things like that, that's between you and maybe the high school kid that came and shoveled your driveway. There's no third party to get in between you and the other person. But if you think about a lot of other transactions, we've sort of migrated to a digital payment system of sorts today that involves third parties, like Visa or MasterCard. They dominate the payment system in the United States. Banks are behind the credit cards, so they're in the scene too. But fundamentally, when you transact with a credit card, people think, well, that's digital, and you're using, a credit card company. And what they do really is amazing. For a relatively small fee, they guarantee that it really was you that did the transaction. If it was fraudulent, they insure the transaction. They'll make you whole on a credit card if you didn't pay it. They establish the identity and say, this really is you, and you really do have the credit available. And then they establish the person that you're buying from as a store and say, this is really a credible transaction. And they approve it or deny it. And what they do, amazing frequency in volume of transactions, is incredible. But that's a third party, and it's a private party. They don't necessarily collect the data between you and, say, Walmart. What did you buy while you were at Walmart? They will be able to say, hey, Walmart's a credible place. You really were there. You really did spend $100 at Walmart. They don't necessarily know what you bought there. They might be able to recover that at some point if they're forensically discovering, what did you buy when you were at Walmart? They might be able to work with Walmart to figure that out, but Visa doesn't necessarily cover that. That's our current state of payments. But in a central bank digital currency, they would be able to know with a digital identity who you are because they've got a digital ID. And when you look at the state of privacy and the amount of data the government has on you, they know who you are. They can have access to all kinds of information. Even the private sector has a lot of information. If you look at what's being done today to aggregate that data, it's not formally being done to establish a digital ID in the United States, but it is being done in lots of places around the world. In China, they've done this digital identification. They've tied it with your facial recognition features, your geolocation data, all your transaction data that they can discern, and everything else they can find about you in a government database in China. And they build what's known as a social credit score. So if you attend events with people that support the government, your social credit score might go up. If you attend events and your geolocation data is associated with people that have, say, been critical of Xi Jinping, your social credit score goes down. And if it goes down enough, you can't even travel in China. So they're linking this digital ID with the payment system, the digital currency. And in that sense, they're kind of essential components to the way that it works. The way that Visa or MasterCard establishes who you are has its own system. Here in a central bank digital currency, digital ID is a critical component to how it works. And the last information I had, in 4 provinces, this is the payment system. And you think, well, China, I mean, they're a communist government. They've got a very authoritarian leader in Xi Jinping. Surely Western civilization wouldn't be doing this. But the reality is 100+ countries around the world are developing a central bank digital currency. And they're not developing what you would think in America with freedom and free markets. They're developing essentially the same kind of central bank digital currency that China is. In fact, the Bank of International Settlement in Switzerland is telling people how to do it. They're facilitating central banks, not just random central banks, our central bank. And they're not working directly with the Federal Reserve entirely. They're saying they're working with this independent private entity, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And this is this quasi-public-private kind of dynamic in the U.S. central bank with the Federal Reserve. So they're building it. Literally, multiple components of the Federal Reserve are actively recruiting people to write code to develop a central bank digital currency. And this is why you see, for Star Wars fans, this is a depiction of the Death Star. I don't want to give away the plot, but the evil empire builds this Death Star that's like a moon-sized place, and it can destroy entire planets with one giant laser beam, and just boom, the planet's gone. It's an amazing amount of power that the empire has built for themselves in Star Wars, and of course it's fiction, but the central bank digital currency is kind of the equivalent. The central banks are saying, oh, well, don't worry, we would need permission from the legislature before we could establish a central bank digital currency. We're just designing it. Well, in the movie, they didn't really get permission to turn it on. They were just designing it. And then they were just building it. And it wasn't yet complete. And then they were just testing it. But once you demonstrate the capability, you've got all the power. And the reality is, in the fall, I traveled with fellow Financial Services Committee members to the Bank of England, and I met with them, and they're developing a central bank digital currency, and they know that their legislature would have to act to impose it on the citizens of the United Kingdom, and they know that it's not popular with their citizens. Nevertheless, they're developing it, just designing it and testing it. Then we traveled to Brussels, and we met with the European Central Bank, and they too are designing and developing and testing how a central bank digital currency could work. And they know that before they could impose this on the European Union, they would need not just support from the European Parliament, but from the member states of the European Union. Nevertheless, they're working to build it. And then we traveled to Basel, Switzerland, which is the base of operations for the Bank of International Settlement. And we met with them, and they too said, well, we're just studying this. We're not really proposing that everyone do it. But the reality is, when you talk to everyone who's developing it, who's helping coordinate it? The Bank of International Settlement. And again, not just, there's no country that we've found anywhere that is developing a system that protects privacy, that protects identity, that protects the transaction data. They're all doing it the same way China is. And are designing it to be interoperable around the world. And the reality is, a system of money is as old as civilization. Like I said, the right to transact predates any government. The government doesn't give you that right, but governments around the world have adopted very similar approach. In the United States, we have the Bank Secrecy Act, anti-money laundering laws, know your customer laws. And in the United States, every Western democracy and in dictatorships around the world, they have similar features for banking. If you spy on your customers, you're allowed to operate a financial services businesses. They don't state it that way. I mean, it's not that creepy inherently in the United States. For the most part, you're supposed to get a warrant. They don't always do that. They've been found to violate it on occasion in the United States. In certain other governments, it's very creepy. But as we were working to protect secrecy, the Canadian government was literally imposing a shutdown on bank accounts for Canadian truck drivers who were protesting COVID policies in Canada. So it wasn't they were stacking SWAT teams or special operators outside the door of houses. The one ring to rule them all, the massive amount of power, was your access to your own money. You can't even buy groceries. You can't pay rent. You have no means of payment. And that's why it's essential that we protect the power to transact and we protect the privacy so that it really has the same kind of characteristics as cash. Because as a citizen, without probable cause and due process, no one should see your transaction data. And without being guilty of something, no one should limit your ability to transact. That's the system of government our countrymen have. And okay, around the world, they don't have the same protections, but why is our government and our central bank working on the exact same plan? When you look at dystopian fiction, whether it's Brave New World or 1984, or what I and billions of people around the world consider Scripture, the book of Revelation, the money is always corrupted. It's taken from its proper use as a store of value and an efficient means of transaction, and it's corrupted into a tool for surveillance, for coercion and control. And unless you comply with the regime, whoever that is, well, then you don't get the right to transact. Everywhere it's depicted, whether it's fiction or Scripture, it's evil. So we should rightly resist this future. It's dystopian. 1984 was meant to be fiction, not an instruction manual. But unfortunately, you see people working to build this very future around the world. So that's what a central bank digital currency is. Let me tell you what it is not. People often will associate every kind of digital money with central bank digital currency. And I'll mention like the Bitcoin as maybe the most widely known form of crypto, certainly the biggest share of the market value. If you look at the Bitcoin white paper, you can look it up out there in just the abstract. The whole point is to preserve the characteristics of cash, permissionless peer-to-peer transactions, where there's no third party that goes through it. And the ability to do this is why Bitcoin became popular. The ability to do this depends on the architecture. There's no corporate headquarters, there's no CEO. It's really math and computer programming. So how does this work? They establish trust in a different way. They assume they trust no one. And the transactions are approved in blocks. That's the way with blockchain, the way it's done very securely. And governments around the world initially didn't like it. They wanted to ban it. And after a while, they decided, well, okay, we can't really ban it. We're not going to be able to stop it. So the check down position is, well, let's just keep it account-based. And account-based crypto is pretty harmless. It's about like banking. I mean, cash isn't technically illegal, but when you go to the bank and ask for any significant amount of it, they always ask questions. And that's because of the Bank Secrecy Act, the anti-money laundering laws, the Know Your Customer laws. What you going to do with all that cash? Well, it's my cash. Why can't I have it? And sometimes they'll tell you, sometimes they won't. Well, I have to fill out this report. Who gave you all that cash? In fact, if you deposit more than $10,000, it creates a cash transaction report. When that was first passed in the early 70s, it was $10,000. Today, that number adjusted for inflation is over $81,000. That's who they were looking for. But if you look at the last presidential administration under Joe Biden, they wanted to know about your bank account if you had ever had $600 of transactions in your bank account. So they're going the other way. And the reality is they want to monitor every single transaction. And that's how they know whether you had a transaction over 10,000, is they look at everything. So there's already a lot of surveillance in it. To me, maybe too much. But the question is, what can you do with it? Once you create a central bank digital currency, you've empowered the central bank to see every side of every transaction. In fact, the former director of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, Giancarlo, talked about digital dollar. He's gone around for a long time talking about it and touts the features. They call it programmable money. If you wanted to put stimulus into the economy like we were doing during COVID, you could put money in and say it expires. If you don't spend it by this date, it's gone. You can say it can only be used for these things. So when we did stimulus checks during COVID, a lot of people went out and bought flat screen TVs from China. That didn't exactly help the U.S. economy. And proponents of programmable money were saying, see, we could make it so you could only spend it on these things and not those things. Climate change alarmists, climatologists as I refer to them, they could program the money so that if you're driving a hybrid vehicle but still need to buy gas from time to time to keep your hybrid internal combustion engine running, well, you could pay $2 a gallon for gas. But if you're driving a pickup truck that's considered a gas guzzler, well, you could pay $10 a gallon. It's programmable money. You could design any feature in it you want because the central government controls it. And that's why central bank digital currency is truly a threat to Western civilization. It puts the government between you and your money. You know, in the United States, the pursuit of happiness has been defined as protection for private property rights. There's no more basic thing than your property right to your bank account, the money that you earn, the paycheck that gets deposited in your bank account. But if that's not really yours, it's really programmable money and it's conditioned upon whatever the government wants to condition it upon. Is it really yours? And that's exactly the future that people want to create out of crypto. Crypto, if you look at the Bitcoin white paper and many of the other use cases, is designed to somewhat separate money from state, because this future is pretty creepy. It's quite literally Orwellian. It's described as one of the characteristics in Orwell's famous book, 1984. Dystopian, which is another synonym for Orwellian. It gives the government a massive amount of power, of coercion and control over the public. And yes, perfect surveillance could, if in the hands of benign, good actors, protect us and keep us safe from bad people. But in our country, you could easily see people that suffer from what I label as Trump derangement syndrome, who are alarmed that Donald Trump would have access to information. Imagine if Donald Trump could control this money. A lot of people in our country would be scared to death. But on the other hand, you could imagine maybe somebody from the political left who would control this money, and you could say, wow, that's pretty creepy. And just like in Lord of the Rings, where they had the one ring to rule them all, the only good thing to do with the one ring to rule them all is destroy it. But actively, right now, the Federal Reserve is hiring coders to write code and develop a central bank digital currency. Actively, right now, our allies are working to develop this. And actively, right now, just as the person who spoke right before me addressed, Mr. Schweiker, the United States has a massive debt problem, but so does a lot of the rest of the world. The last time the planet had this much debt was at the end of World War II. And the main difference is at the end of World War II, we knew we had to spend less money, and we did. Our debt to GDP ratio, the amount of money we owe versus the size of our economy, is about the same size as it is right now. But instead of wanting to spend less, right now we can't even agree to cut off $9.4 billion in Doge cuts. That's 0.13% of what our United States government's going to spend this year. I mean, it passed the House with no support from Democrats and 4 Republicans voting against it, but it can't get a floor vote in the Senate yet. So think about the sentiment. At the end of World War II, we knew we had to spend less, and even then, they did a monetary reset. So some people might have heard of this idea of a great reset. One of the core components of it is resetting the money system. And the money system they have in mind is this: central bank digital currency. And when the crisis occurs, they might say, well, there's all kinds of things we could do, but here's what we can do now. That would take forever to develop every other alternative. But what we could do now is what we've been working on for a decade, is we could launch this central bank digital currency, and it's going to solve everything. It's going to keep us safe. It's going to catch the tax evaders and money launderers and illicit finance. And in the hands of a good leader, it could. But the reality, as we know, as our founders recognized in Federalist paper after Federalist paper and in the very structure of our government, eventually somebody who isn't benign is going to have the power. For Lord of the Rings fan, they know that even the best person, when they put the ring on, it's tempting to do evil things. And that's what's going to happen with this. We have to stop it right now. That's why Donald Trump's executive order, when he came into office on digital assets, banned central bank digital currency. That's why my colleague Tom Emmer has moved a bill to ban central bank digital currency. Unfortunately, it hasn't gotten a vote on the floor of this House, and it's this term in the House of Representatives, and it doesn't have a clear path through the Senate. Well, it's the creepiest surveillance tool I've ever seen. I can't get my coalition of Republicans and Democrats to oppose it. Last Congress, I had a coalition of 123 Republicans and 96 Democrats who voted to end the evasion of the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment is supposed to protect your privacy. The government's supposed to get your data only with probable cause and a warrant or a subpoena from a court. But they're buying your data. They're creating a market for data, and they're buying their way around the Fourth Amendment. We wanted to turn that off. The Fourth Amendment doesn't regulate private entities, but it does regulate the government, in part because the government has a power that no private sector body does. They can put you in jail. They can deprive you of life, liberty, and property. I'm glad that we've got this bipartisan coalition, but I don't understand why Democrats are more concerned about the ability to monitor your transactions than they are about the invasion of privacy. I hope we restore that coalition on this and we can work together to ban central bank digital currency, but I truly believe this poses an existential threat to Western civilization. If this thing takes effect, it is a massive amount of power. It is the kind of power that the Death Star has over civilization. People think, oh, I would resist. A lot of people won't even go vote. How aggressively are they going to resist when the government shuts off access to your bank? I mean, we had a trial run of this during COVID. Lots of people really objected to all sorts of things about COVID policies, but their workplace imposed mandates and restrictions, including shots that weren't really tested or proven, and now that we find out data, there's a lot of concern about mRNA in particular. I talked to nurses who were crying in our office, but they felt like they couldn't risk losing their job, and they chose to get shots that they were concerned about. Because the coercive power of your access to earning a living, massive amount of power. People can't afford it. They can't pay their way to live. They can't raise their family. This power is way bigger than that. People, we got to stop this. We have a president who wants to stop it. He's issued an executive order, but we don't have a legislature that's doing the work to stop it. We're talking about moving crypto bills today, and the Senate's passed the Genius Act in the Banking Committee and on the floor of the Senate, which regulates stablecoins. Stablecoins are about 7% of the crypto market. The rest is market structure. I've had a bill to regulate that since 2018. Over 7 years, I've been trying to stop this. Not stop the good things, not stop the market from things like Bitcoin or Bitcoin ETFs or all kinds of other use cases that are good. Not stopping self-custody, but protecting self-custody so that you protect the ability to transact. But stopping the counter to it, central bank digital currency, the one ring to rule them all. We've been trying to stop it for that long. The idea was maybe not even possible technologically when science fiction writers were writing Brave New World or 1984 or Fahrenheit or in Scripture. How could this even happen when you read Revelation through all time? But today, we can see the technology that can do it. And with artificial intelligence, it's even quicker. And here we are talking about an AI provision in the big, beautiful bill that stays. No matter what else they rule out, they seem to find a way for the AI provision to be there for more surveillance on more people. Folks, we got to stop this. And we need the legislature to step up and do it. So I plead with you everywhere you can. Don't be fearful of all digital assets. Bitcoin, for example, is 180 degrees different than central bank digital currency. But do everything you can to stop the government's power grab with this. Or the superficial layer that's really just cosmetic, where the big banks offer a cosmetic layer of stable coins, but on the back end it's effectively a central bank digital currency operated by not just the Federal Reserve, but the central banks around the world working together with the Bank of International Settlement to create this system. It is a true threat to Western civilization, and maybe something that to some of my colleagues who couldn't be here tonight also is as big of a deal to them. I appreciate those people that have co-sponsored and voted for Tom Emmer's bill. I hope we can vote on it soon in the House, and I hope the Senate takes it up. So with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. Does the gentleman have a motion?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all, Mr. Speaker, I move that the House may now adjourn.
question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until 9 a.m. tomorrow.